Speaking of giving it his all on every shift and never having to question effort, let's bring him in. Jeff Paterson, brought to you by Greta, the home of our electric watch parties. Greta is Canucks Army spot to catch the game throughout the season, playoffs, which are coming, and also our place to chill in the off season. Host of Rinkwide, Jeff Paterson, my co-host of Rinkwide on Sunday night. Jeff Paterson, that has a pretty good ring to it, doesn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, it was fun. It was good to get you on. We're going to get Harm onto a Rinkwide here before too long as well. So looking forward to that. And can't get enough of this hockey club that is 11-3-1. And honestly, the more I look at that number and that record, who saw that coming?
Not us, Jeff. Your takeaways from the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that they bounced back, and they're not going to win every game. And so, sure, I mean, I know that a huge portion of the fan base wanted, if there was going to be a win on the road trip, they wanted it to be in Toronto. But look, outside of the power plays, they weren't good enough against the Maple Leafs. I like the fact that they responded 24 hours later. They got a Montreal team that was also playing back-to-back. Bit of a frantic first period, and then the Canucks took over, and I heard you talking about Conor Garland, and nice to see him rewarded. He has been playing well, but there wasn't a bottom line, and when he's getting paid what he's paid, I know he's a little lower in the lineup than he'd probably like to be, but he's settled in on that line with Suter and Joshua, but there still has to be a bottom line for him, and so as good as he was in the second period, and really throughout that hockey game, my concern is it can't be another 10 or 12 games before he rises up and we rave about him yet again. So I like the effort from Conor Garland. I like the effort from pretty much everybody in that lineup on Sunday. Casey DeSmith was terrific. Really like what I'm seeing from Ilya Mikheyev for a guy that, coming off the surgery and didn't get a preseason or a training camp. Like, I had my concerns. How long was it going to take until he was able to be a factor? But he's already been a factor. The goals are great, but I just think he's holding his own. And on some nights has kind of been dragging that line along. So again, there's just so much to like around this hockey club right now. And I wrote about it at Canucks Army yesterday. Like, they're 11-3-1. They've scratched 2 Eastern road trips off the schedule already. The Vegas Golden Knights are in Washington tonight. This is the first time Vegas has played a game outside of the Western Conference. Vegas has only played 5 road games all season. 3 of them are in the state of California, which isn't exactly, owners travel. And look, I know they're the champs and they're good home and away. But when you look at where the Vancouver Canucks are and they're within striking distance of Vegas, and again, sentences that just I didn't think I would be saying in mid-November, the Golden Knights have played 5 road games and 10 at home. Like, they haven't traveled yet. But they are kind of hitting the meat of their schedule now, 8 of their next 9 away from home. And in fact, the 9th game of that stretch will be here in Vancouver on the 30th of November. So the Canucks have hit a little bit of a soft pocket now, and that's what I wrote about at Canucks Army. I know everybody in hockey seems to be waiting for the other shoe to drop with this hockey club, and yet look at their next 10 games. 2 against Calgary, 2 against Seattle, 2 against the San Jose Sharks, 1 against the Islanders tomorrow night, and the Anaheim Ducks in there as well. Of those teams that I just mentioned, the Ducks are the only team above the playoff bar right now. So, like, this 10-game stretch that'll take the Canucks up to the 25-game mark of their schedule, like, it's there for them. There isn't a lot of travel. It's compressed, so that's going to present some challenges. But, I mean, they've met just about every challenge head on. I think this next 10-game stretch here, a real opportunity continue to put distance between themselves and teams like the Flames and the Kraken that we kind of figured that they would be lumped with as this season unfolded.
J-Pat, you mentioned Ilya Mikheyev. He's up to, of course, six goals and 9 points in 11 games here. He's been terrific. What have you made of his line mates? Because I think we can agree Mikheyev's been sort of the best driver, especially over this little Eastern road trip. What do you make of what we've seen from Pettersson and Kuzmenko lately?
Well, I think we knew this about Elias Pettersson, that the guy's just so supremely talented that, like, I don't think anybody's shocked that he's leading the NHL in scoring. And yet those that have watched him over his years in the NHL, and I put myself in this group, like, I still don't feel like we have seen him absolutely take over hockey games the way Quinn Hughes has on a number of occasions this season, Harm. Yeah, he had the hat trick game against Nashville, and that's great. And then like the one-timer that he scored in Ottawa on the power play, like that looked like vintage Elias Pettersson. I see people, he had a quiet weekend. He didn't have much going on in Toronto and didn't find the score sheet in Montreal. So the league's leading scorer, had a bit of a quiet weekend. It happens. But anytime it happens in this market, he's got to be hurt. He's playing through things. That wrist, there's got to be. I can tell you, I was at practice today. He spent a fair bit of time along with Pia Suter and Teddy Bluger, doing face-off drills with Daniel and Henrik Sedin. Like if the wrist was bothering him, he's not engaging in that kind of exercise at practice. So again, I'm not shocked with where the point totals are, but I keep thinking to myself, like, he is going to take over games. He's going to dominate. He's that good. And when that happens, like, look out. So the guy that I'm struggling to figure out right now is Andrei Kuzmenko. And I put this out on Twitter on the weekend, just sort of asking people where they are with his play, because the points are there. Like, it's not like he's not contributing. He assisted on the Mikheyev goal in Montreal on Sunday. The underlying numbers are really good, as they are for just about everybody on this team right now. But, this guy burst onto the scene last year, and those goals were explosive, and he had the big grin and the smile and the personality, and we were all sort of learning about him at this time last year. It's been pretty quiet around Andrei Kuzmenko. Again, not terrible. I think the biggest difference is that those doorstep goals that he scored so many of, they're not there. And part of that is just because of the motion and the movement on the power play. And, I'm sure Kuzmenko is not complaining about a power play that's running north of 30% right now, but he just doesn't seem to be a big part of it. He might lead the team in third assists if they gave those out, because he is involved. He's touching the puck, but he's just not converting at the rate that he did. So the 3 goals, 15 games in, I mean, I think we all expected that there was going to be a setback, and a setback's not the right word, a decline. And there has been, but I don't think he's playing poorly. It's just that it almost feels like Rick Tocchet is turning Andrei Kuzmenko into Phil DiGiuseppe a little bit. That he wants him to be, he wants the Russian Phil DiGiuseppe. He wants him to win his board battles and, get in on the forecheck and turn pucks over. And you do have to do those types of things at the National Hockey League level, but where, this is a guy that has some of that flair to his game. I think that's what's missing from Kuzmenko's game right now. We're not seeing sort of the same flair that he showed on so many nights last season.
Jeff, you were at practice this morning. You wrote about it over at CanucksArmy.com. Great job, by the way. But
Thanks,
Bo Horvat in town tomorrow, and you asked a few Canucks about this. The reception tomorrow. What do you expect when Bo Horvat takes to the ice tomorrow?
I'll get to that in a sec, but let me say, and I think Rick Tocchet has pushed just about every right button. Like, it's hard to find a misstep in the way that he has handled things. And I thought it was really interesting. They had yesterday off after back-to-back games and the Eastern road trip, and they've got back-to-backs on Wednesday and Thursday. And again, this 10-game stretch is really compressed. So Tocchet talked about the fact that, he didn't want his guys out on the ice for long. So they were only out for about 30 minutes today. And it wasn't a conventional practice, not a lot of line rushes, not a lot of, drills and game state, like replicating whether power play or penalty kill. They did a short area game where they brought the nets to the blue line. And it was just kind of about fun. And I think getting guys back around the rink, and obviously it's a game day tomorrow, and so they'll start to focus on the Islanders. But just the spirits of this group right now, and again, it comes back to this record, like, they are having fun. They're enjoying themselves, and why wouldn't they, especially in contrast to where they were at this time last year. But yeah, Bo Horvat's back tomorrow. I know that the market's been wondering about the reception. The 3 players that I talked to, and they were all brought out, it wasn't just me. I mean, they did the media scrum. The first one was JT Miller, and it was kind of funny because the first question was about Horvat, and you could just see the look on JT's face, and he said, I don't want to dip my toe in that basket. But then he gave a glowing review of Bo, and he said, I know that there's been lots of talk in the market and the rumors and all those types of things. He had nothing but good things to say about Bo Horvat. He didn't want to comment on what kind of reception he was going to get. Quinn Hughes, the current captain, speaking about the former captain, he kind of laid it right out there and said, like, I would expect that he's going to get a warm welcome, and he would hope that he did. And then went on to talk about all the years of service and the fact that Bo was always there and available. And, he stood in front of the microphones on a regular basis. And, it was a very sort of captain answer from Quinn Hughes. And Elias Pettersson was asked about it as well. And, Elias came right out and said, like, I hope he doesn't get booed. So we heard that basically from the players that, they're expecting that there will be a very solid, a warm reception for Bo Horvat, that first TV timeout in the first period when they always do the video tributes. And I would think that Horvat may get an extended one. And I've said this before. I think what you see on social media isn't necessarily what you're going to see and feel inside the rink. That I think a lot of the season ticket holders, the people that have paid big money over the years, I think that they appreciate all that Bo Horvat did for this organization on and off the ice. It's never just one guy. And yeah, he's sort of the face of a dark decade through no fault of his own, really. I mean, could he have done more? Maybe a little bit, but that guy was there when the chips were down in the playoffs, in the bubble, played some of his best hockey as a Canuck. Nobody ever questioned the effort and did an awful lot for this hockey club. It's just unfortunate for him that there was a lot of losing on his watch when he was the captain. But my hunch is, maybe there will be some booing from parts of Rogers Arena, but I think for the most part, the overwhelming response will be pretty positive for Bo Horvat. And look, it's an Islanders team that got off to a nice start, but didn't look great the rest of the way against the Edmonton Oilers last night. Interestingly enough, the Islanders had ice booked for UBC. That's where the Canucks practice today. Shania Twain is at Rogers Arena, but they elected to scrap their practice session. So a full day off in Bo Horvat's old hometown and back to work for the Islanders tomorrow.
Pat, I wanted to ask you about Nikita Zadorov. There's been a lot of buzz around his name, multiple insiders connecting Vancouver as a team that could have strong interest or does have strong interest in him as a potential target. What do you make of Zadorov as a potential target? And do you like the fit? Do you not like the fit? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if this team is going to be a playoff team, then adding that type of player, a player with that kind of profile, absolutely could help the Vancouver Canucks. But I mean, the acquisition cost, quite frankly, scares me. And everything's going right for this team. I'm not sure that they need to jump in with both feet right now to make that kind of trade. So I would preach patience for the Vancouver Canucks to continue to get a better read on how good this team really is. That said, he may not last in the market. There may be other teams that meet Calgary's asking price. So the acquisition cost and slotting that kind of salary under the Canucks' current cap situation is it's a challenge, obviously. So who's moving to make a deal like that one happen? The other part that you just can't discount in this day and age is the fact that he's represented by Dan Milstein. And, it shouldn't matter who a guy's agent is, but we know the strong ties between Milstein and his organization and the Vancouver Canucks. And so, I do think that you connect some dots there. And we've heard that the Canucks are going to be interested, whether it's through trade or if he hits the open market. Does the Carson Soucy situation, does it change the dynamics here? Is there more urgency? Talkit listed him as week to week. Well, they said that about him at the tail end of the preseason, and week to week turned out to be 2 games. So, I'm not totally certain what week to week means anymore when it comes to injuries. And particularly, we've heard that an awful lot around a few guys like Teddy Bluger. We thought originally was week to week, and that turned out to be 5 weeks. So it was just week to week to week to week to week. But back to your point, big, strong, physical guy. We know that Rick Tocchet absolutely adores the blueprint that the Vegas Golden Knights used to win the Stanley Cup. And I think along those lines, that Zadorov would fit the bill. But I just keep coming back to this idea of at what cost, and is this the time right now to be making that kind of move? If he was a right shot guy, I think it's a different conversation. The fact that he's a lefty, again, Soucy's injured, but he's going to be back. It's not like you're replacing a guy that you've lost for the remainder of the season. The one thing I will say about all of this is, and I think it's important to remember that Jim Rutherford is still the guy at the top of the hockey food chain here. His history has quite often been to try to get ahead of the market, to make trades well before the trade deadline, to identify his targets and pull off the trade. So just remember who's ultimately calling the shots here in Vancouver, and we'll see if that comes to be. But I don't know. It feels a little too soon in a season where everything is going right for this hockey club to make that kind of splash right here, right now, for a player that isn't perfectly suited. Again, as a left shot guy, I know he can play the other side, but we also know that this coaching staff has been reluctant to do that. So, it's not a perfect fit for me, but I also can see that it's not that far off the kind of player I think that Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote would like to get their hands on.
Jeff, seems to be some rumblings around Elias Pettersson right now. Our friend Frank Seravalli did some reporting today from Allvin at the NHL GM meetings. Would you just like to see the organization just get this contract done once and for all?
Well, again, if he's going to lead the National Hockey League in scoring over the bulk of the season, the meter's running and the price is only going to go up from here. So, from the organization standpoint, yeah, I mean, it would make sense I think, he's proven, again, it's only 15 games, but last year wasn't a mirage, that this guy is one of the best forwards in the National Hockey League. And I think if you could get the certainty around him and get him locked up and just remove any of that discussion, I think we all remember we were there at training camp in Victoria, and the first chance to talk to him, the question about the contract came up, and I've been there basically every day. Nobody's asked him since. Like, if people thought that was going to be this ongoing issue and a distraction, it hasn't been. I mean, that question had to be asked. It was our first chance to talk to him after the summer, but it hasn't been the type of thing that's been asked of him on a daily basis here. He's gone about his business, and his business has been pretty good to get to 25 points in 15 games. So it was unfortunate with the timing, because we had Elias there today and a chance to talk to him, and he finished the scrum. And as people looked at their phones, that report was coming out right then and there. And it was like, hey, get back here. We got some more questions we want to ask you. It didn't go down that way. So another day where, he's not asked about this. This isn't an ongoing thing. We all know the story is there around him, but it certainly hasn't affected him. And that's been good for him. It's been good for the hockey club. Had he got off to a slow start and he stumbled out of the gates, I think it would have been fair to wonder if this was weighing on his mind in any way. But he certainly seems to have been able to put that on the back burner and just play, and for the most part, play some terrific hockey. So, yeah, I think if the organization could get it done just to bring some certainty, not only in the here and now, but also know that you've got this guy locked up, presumably long term. But if you're Pettersson in his camp, but maybe you want to play the waiting game a little bit more just to see, ultimately how this season is going to play itself out.
Jeff, great stuff as always, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Always fun, boys. Thanks for having me.
As Jeff Paterson, courtesy of our friends at Greta. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.